Ladies and gentlemen, college football fans alike, it is your host back here yet again with once more another episode installment. And ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the year again for our top 10, early top 10 quarterback rankings for the 2024 college football season, which is ahead of us in just a few days, ladies and gentlemen. We are stoked. We are excited. Our blood is pumping just to be able to sit in front of our TVs and be able to watch college football right in front of us. We cannot wait any more longer for the season to finally arrive. Of course, it has been somewhat of a quiet offseason over here on the channel, but you know what? We've just been sort of, compromising and being able to get things done with my life and trying to, like I said, make compromises for the podcast, for the YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. But we're back here today live, and we're coming at you again with our latest installment of the top 10 quarterback breakdown in college football. Please, if you do not mind, give myself a like. Some support would be very gratifying if you were to do that. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. We don't have any honorable mentions today. I think it's a little bit too premature to come out with any honorable mention rankings, considering the season has yet to start, and all of this is just, speculation and projections of guys so far from what we've been able to, see of their film from the 2023 season. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And coming in at our number 10 spot is probably one of the most intriguing, one of the most, shall we say, big what-if factors for a football team. If he translates, if he comes into his own and really turns himself into an established quarterback, and that's Cam Ward coming in at our number 10 spot. Now, of course, if you are an avid listener to our podcast, dating all the way back to last year, you guys will know that we have spoke highly and we've had a lot of high praise for this young man, Cam Ward. Now the starting quarterback at Miami, projected to be starting quarterback here for the Hurricanes. He's had back-to-back consecutive 3,000-yard passing seasons, 20-plus touchdown passes, and has not had over 10 interceptions in a single season. So he's had a really good touchdown-interception ratio. He's very effective, very efficient passer. Obviously, coming from that very air raid-oriented offense over there at Washington State, where he's played at for the past 2 seasons. Transferring into Miami, like I said, this is one of the most intriguing acquisitions of the transfer portal this past cycle. Of course, Mario Cristobal trying to get, himself a winning season over here at Miami. A lot is on the table for the Hurricanes coming into this season. So, look, if it's going to happen, if it's going to transpire, this guy right here, Cam Ward, is going to have to be their big factor. And, of course, all I can do is sort of, like I said, base everything upon the eye test of what I've been able to see on film and be able to see what this guy can do and what his capability is on the field. I think he's got, a very, very underrated arm talent. I think he's got one of those, pure X-factor abilities. I mean, he was one of the guys I was able to elevate that Washington State offense for several seasons. And, of course, I know it's an air raid-oriented offense. You're going to not have something like that over there at Miami. Not exactly like that over at Miami. But, of course, I think when you get a guy like this, he's one of the most intriguing quarterbacks in all of the nation. A guy that a lot of people may not know the name of, unless you watch a lot of Pac-12 football and kept up with, some of the quarterbacks and the high-efficient offenses throughout the nation in the past couple of years. And you may know who this guy is. Like I said, he's orchestrated so many of the high-octane offenses here at Washington State. I think he's one of the most captivating dudes of everyone on my list. Of course, there's always that one guy that you could always point the green arrow up and say that he could be one of the ascending names in all of college football. I think number 10 is a pretty pinpoint accurate ranking for my guy Cam Ward right now. I think it's all going to be predicated upon what he can do for Miami this season in order to see really how well this guy really is as a quarterback. In terms of draft grades for Cam Ward, I think we're going to keep this as a day 3 prospect so far. I don't think he's going to, like I said, unless he puts together a huge season for the Hurricanes this year. I think there's a little bit more that we're going to have to see out of this kid. maybe just to see if he can, be effective and efficient at two different schools. Like we've seen a lot of guys the past couple of years being able to put big numbers up at two different schools. Like, take, for instance, the past two Heisman winners. Take, for instance, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, being able to put big numbers for two different schools. Can Cam Ward fall into that same category as those guys? I'm not saying to win the Heisman, but I'm saying just to be able to win and be effective at two different schools in the Power 5, or now known as the Power 4 level of football. And, of course, I think that's going to be one of the things that's going to be able to help us grade out my guy, Cam Ward, very fairly and, be able to get ourselves a just grade on him. I do love his athleticism. I like this kid. I've been a big fan, a big advocate, a big proponent of what he can bring to the table. This is a dude that's got some big-time, college football statistical numbers. I would just like to see him succeed in his senior season here at Miami and be able to help maybe elevate them to a possible ACC title. Coming in at number 9, okay? This is a white disclaimer before we get to our number 9 guy. This is going to be the only dude who plays in the non-Power 4 conferences, and this is Seth Henigan from Memphis. Now, I will say, white disclaimer about Seth Henigan, of all the dudes in my top 10, he is the one guy I have probably seen the less film of any of the guys that I've been able to evaluate here in the top 10. 6'3", 215. Going into his senior season here for the Memphis Tigers, obviously helped lead them to a 10-3 record last year. Of course, they're sort of looked upon as being one of the teams to win the ACC next season. This guy is, as I've been told, a very strong drop back pocket quarterback. Really, the reason why we have Henigan here in our top 10 is simply because I was looking at so many other commodities and prospects to possibly throw into the equation from the non-Power 4 level. And, of course, I think of all the quarterbacks you can, possibly bring up, he's the one that stands out most significantly. And, of course, throughout the past couple of seasons, we have seen these dudes from the non-Power 5, or like I said, now known as the non-Power 4 level, considering the Pac-12 is disbanded and it's only 4 Power 5 conference, four major conferences, beg your pardon. I think Seth Henigan is the guy that stands out the most significantly of all of them. When you turn on the tape of this kid, he had a really good game against Missouri, which was a neutral site action game. They only lost 34-27 in that ball game. He also had a really strong performance against Iowa State, in which they won the Liberty Bowl. To me, this guy stands out. He's definitely one of those drop-back, pure pocket presence quarterbacks. Sort of reminds me a little bit of what Clayton Tune was for the Houston Cougars a few years ago, who came out in a draft prospect. We were really relatively high on him as well. We've seen these guys is, sort of just following the pedigree of what we've seen out of quarterbacks through the past couple of seasons, where, you're going to have a long list of, guys who are under most of the spotlight. Most everybody knows them, household names, but you're also going to have one of those guys who's going to come from, the non-Power 5 level. And we've seen this with guys like Desmond Ridder. We've seen this with guys like Clayton Tune, even Michael Pratt from last year's class. There's always going to be that guy. Even dudes like Zach Wilson, who are able to get drafted as high as the second overall pick. Now, of course, we've seen that hasn't translated. Seth Henigan right now, I got him as a day 3 guy. Can't say any more than that. I think if he has another big season for the Memphis Tigers, he's another guy that can be able to elevate his draft stock. But right now, we got him here at number 9. Coming in at number 8 in our top 10 quarterback breakdown. And, of course, coming from the most strongest and the most efficient conference in all of football, the grand and mighty SEC Conference. We got the first of the SEC quarterbacks, and that is Brady Cook from Missouri. Look, just to make it abundantly clear, all right? I'm just going to go out here on the record to say this dude is, if you want to talk all the long list of quarterbacks from the SEC. Now, of course, several guys could come to mind. Carson Beck, whether it's, Quinn Ewers over here at Texas, even Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Hell, maybe even you throw a couple of other guys into the equation, such as, LSU's quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, who I also think could also have a pretty strong season. But, dude, I tell you this, all right? Listen loudly and clearly, but Missouri's gotten themselves quite an established quarterback over here as well. Brady Cook coming into his senior season, a guy that's unlike what a lot of people may think. He has gone through adversity like a lot of these other quarterbacks. He's been able to climb up the depth chart and be able to solidify himself here as being one of the top tier quarterbacks in all of the nation. And look, senior season, had a really strong offense last season from Missouri, and that remarkable season that they were able to have last year. And I definitely think they're going to have themselves another good season as well. He's got Luther Burden on the outside perimeter to be able to distribute the football to. They also got Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss. They got a really strong supporting cast of pass catchers. Some people may say, well, he has the luxury of being able to throw the ball to all these guys. No wonder he puts up big stats. Look, man, if you turn on the tape, you watch this young man play, this is a quarterback where his coach, Eli Drinkwitz, I think he totally epitomizes each and everything Eli Drinkwitz would ask and envy out of his quarterback to do. Pocket breaks down. Look, he's going to be able to tuck and run. He's a little bit of a powerful guy, a lot more than a lot of people might think. He's not really one of those elusive running quarterbacks like we see with some other guys. He's a bigger bodied guy. He can be able to lower the boom on some guys. But most imperatively, I think he's got a lot more underrated skills under pressure, being able to deliver the football effectively and efficiently whenever the pocket breaks down. He's one of those guys that's just not going to tuck and run it and be able to go upfield like that's his first initial read. No, this is a guy that is not afraid. He's fearless. He's going to be able to throw the football down, a defensive throat. And he's one of those kind of guys that is fearless. Okay, he's resilient. He's one of the most intriguing quarterbacks I think we have in the SEC conference and going into this college football season. Now, of course, likewise with the other two guys we mentioned, I got a day 3 grade on them. I don't think you can say any more better. Of course, he wants to be able to emulate some of the same success he had last year. Really good passer rating last year. Touchdown interception ratio was, like I said, very efficient. 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Very poised quarterback. 3,000 yards also in the air. You know what? I think this is going to be a high-octane offense over here at Missouri like it was last year. Now, of course, Cody Schrader's gone. He was a 1,600-yard rusher last year. You're going to rely a little bit more. I think the passing game is going to sort of be their, shall we say, the bread and butter of their football team. I think they're going to have a good running game as well. But look, with Brady Cook under center, he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to distribute the football and be able to impact this Missouri football team. Therefore, I think he's the most underrated quarterback in the SEC and totally deserving of a top 10 recognition going into the season. All right, let's keep it in the SEC. Number 7, we got Jackson Dart over there playing for Ole Miss Rebels. A man over there at the SIP playing for his coach, Lane Kiffin, one of the most innovative offensive minds in all of the game. Everybody that tunes into the podcast that is one of our avid listeners knows that we are huge advocates of Lane Kiffin. We are absolutely stoked to see what he's got in store this season for the Ole Miss Rebels, and more so in particular, what he's got in store for his quarterback going into his 3rd season starting in that Lane Kiffin offense. Now, first year, I was very underwhelmed with Jackson Dart. I will be the first one to admit I thought he had some very underwhelming numbers. I didn't think he was really as impactful last year. The numbers sort of got better, sort of strikingly similar numbers to what Brady Cook was able to post at Missouri last year. Now, I have also seen many people, many scouting analysis, college football viewers who will sit here and tell me that, oh man, 7 for Jackson Dart, that's too low. How could you possibly say he's only the number 7 quarterback in this year's class? And which, by the way, a wide disclaimer, I got a 3rd round grade on him as well. I got to be honest, he's a brilliant executor of what the Lane Kiffin offense is ran through. It's ran through RPO plays. It's ran through, heavy play action. It's heavily ran through trying to sell the linebackers, trying to, read the eyes of the linebacker and be able to, like I said, the RPO game is a huge part of what they do here. And then, of course, Jackson Dart, I just, there's just some things in his game that I just do not see elite quarterback of. Now, maybe it's the fact that, he's in a perfect scheme. He's a guy that's going to more than likely put up big numbers for Ole Miss once again. And, of course, if you're just one of the guys who's captivated by, stats alone, then yeah, you're going to look at this guy as being one of the best quarterbacks in the entire, outlook of college football. But when you watch this guy on tape, there's nothing to me that screams, shall we say, franchise quarterback material or fringe franchise material. And I just don't think, regardless of what happens this year, I don't think this guy is going to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I feel like this is sort of deja vu for me because I was one of the people who was relatively high on Matt Corral when he came out. He was really the first of the Lane Kiffin quarterbacks that he was able to coach at Ole Miss. And similarly enough, they wear the same number. They're very synonymous players, and how they're able to play the game, how they're able to execute Kiffin's offense effectively and efficiently. And, of course, we've seen how Matt Corral's been able to translate into the NFL and just, well, quite frankly, hasn't made the NFL. I think he's even gone to some spring leagues and tried to catch on to a roster and was, not able to, grasp that. So that's a little bit alarming for me. Of course, I hope the best for Jackson Dart. I hope he stands out as a unique quarterback for the Rebels this season, but I'm only basing a lot of what I know from past experience. We saw Matt Corral. We saw that we thought, he was a deceiver. He was a deception. A lot of people had him relatively high like I did when he came out in the 22 draft class. So I look at Jackson Dart the same for the 24 draft class. I got him as number 7. Now, I think it would be absolutely asinine to not have him in the top 10. I have to have him in the top 10. But like I said, brilliant executor. He's great with the RPO game. He's great at selling a defense. He's great at what makes the position. He makes it look easy, shall we say. But to say this guy is a franchise quarterback, I cannot go to that extent. I hope he has a great season, and which he probably will. I think Ole Miss is going to be one of the strong suit teams of all of college football. But to say that this dude is a franchise quarterback or a French franchise guy, I cannot go to that level. Like I said, I got a third round grade on the guy. Day 3, third round grade, somewhere in between. That's where we got Jackson Dart right now as our number 7 quarterback. All right, moving on, number 6 quarterback. All right, we're on a roll right now. These are, getting into the range of guys who I think, without a doubt, are probably second-round commodities. Regardless of not now, of course, big season performances out of these next guys that are going to be listed, I think they could ascend even higher than maybe just second-round grades. This is Dillon Gabriel from Oregon, transfer from Oklahoma. Obviously, previously transferring also from UCF to Oklahoma, now coming to Oregon to be the starting quarterback for the Oregon Ducks. Look, I will be the first one to say, basing upon what we saw from him last year in that veer and shoot offense over there at Oklahoma, I was once more very underwhelmed. Now, here's the thing a lot of people got to realize. Offenses in college football can be very deceiving for a lot of NFL scouts. It's because it's a very different situation than what it would be in the NFL. Is they scheme and they game plan much different than what an NFL coach would want to do. I was very underwhelmed. I wouldn't have been sitting here and telling you that, Dillon Gabriel is going to be a possible first-round commodity if he stays at Oklahoma. Well, look, if he had stayed at Oklahoma, I don't think we'd be looking at him as, well, quite frankly, the number 6 quarterback in my tier rankings. I will say this. Transferring to Oregon may have been the best decision he's made so far of his football career. This is an excellent situation that he's entering in. We've seen this offense last year in the past 2 seasons with Bo Nix under center, being able to put up some massive numbers and being able to, like I said, just being able to exploit defenses and just being able to, like on a regular basis, I don't know what, I think they averaged 44 points a game last year, which it's just absurd to say. And in the 22 season, they were equally as good. But look at this guy, Dillon Gabriel, okay? He's outstanding. He was able to put up monster numbers at UCF, if people can remember what he was able to do there once upon a time ago. But, dude, this offense is literally idealistic for him. You don't want to talk about one of the best scheme fits in the offense of all the guys here. I think this is one of the absolute best, okay? There might be one other guy, maybe two other guys who I think are in a better scheme situation than Dillon Gabriel, but you want to talk about a guy who can be an ascending piece. Some people got him in the betting odds as a Heisman favorite. I totally am on board. This offense, the way it's operated, the way it's run, is absolutely incredible for the skill set for Dillon Gabriel to be able to cope with. Also, all right, a little mental factor here is that, he has played a lot of college football. He has seen a lot of defenses. I've heard a lot of guys, not just myself, being able to mention that on several occasions. And look, coming into the Big Ten for Oregon, that's going to be some of the most savviest defenses you're going to see, with the likeness of Iowa, with the likeness of Michigan. I mean, even the likeness of maybe the Ohio State Buckeyes defense this year. So you're talking about some of the most savviest defenses, some of the savviest, reputations that they have, but also the fact that Oregon's a football team that has been able to prove they can do this. They can do this with athletic quarterbacks like Dillon Gabriel. And I don't think they're going to cease to disappoint. I think Dillon Gabriel is going to thrive effectively for the Oregon Ducks, and inevitably, I think he's going to lead them to the college football playoffs. I think big things are in store for Dillon Gabriel and that Oregon football team as a whole. He lands in as our number 6 guy. Now, let's enter the chat with the top 5 quarterbacks going into this year's season. And look, maybe a couple of guys on my list has surprised a lot of you. You guys who are maybe Brady Cook haters are probably, the most shocked by that and may not even be shocked totally by my number 5 guy. Look, my number 5 quarterback is Kyron Drones, quarterback, Virginia Tech. Now, of course, I have not gone on record as much to say how much I think this Virginia Tech football team is a lethal, an absolute formidable football team going into the 2024 season. I think they got exceptionally high capability at being able to contend in the ACC. And it's all going to be ran through this one man right here, Kyron Drones, their quarterback, who I promise you this, I did not know much about the guy just purely based upon watching football games last year. We did not talk a lot about Virginia Tech and Kyron Drones throughout the season on the podcast last year, okay? But going into this year, it's a new year. It's a new era for certain teams going into this season. And look, man, I have a lot of high praise for this Virginia Tech football team going into this season. This guy, Kyron Drones, really strikes me, okay? I think he's possibly right now he's a second-round quarterback. But, dude, I'm telling you, based upon how he could play this year, he could sneak into the first-round conversation. He's just got that much high of a ceiling right now. First things first, right when I turn on the tape, he's a guy that can be able to push the ball down the field. He's a guy with some, ability to be able to extend plays, roll out of the pocket, being able to launch the ball down the field and get it into the playmaker's hands. He's also a dude with some extraordinary mobility as well, which I think is going to be one thing that's really going to just absolutely be highly difficult to deal with when you're scheming against Virginia Tech with Kyron Drones as their quarterback. I tell you this, I might be going out on a limb here. I've gone out on a limb several times with a lot of my quarterback evaluations, and ultimately we will only see how a lot of these things work out in the grand scheme of things, how right I am and how wrong I might be. But I tell you this, Kyron Drones reminds me a hell of a lot like Michael Vick back in the days for Virginia Tech. Maybe not quite the pure dominance that he was at Virginia Tech. But I tell you this, maybe it's the fact that we haven't seen this kid enough to be able to get a real good glimpse, a real good, taste in the mouth of what this guy can be like. Okay, we saw a little bit of a sample size last year. He didn't come into the season as Virginia Tech's starting quarterback, but I tell you this much, if he absolutely dominates, if he lives up to the way I'm building him up to be, like a Michael Vick 2.0 or a poor man's version of Michael Vick, then you could rest assured he's going to be one of the best quarterback prospects in all of the nation and all of the land. I buy into him. I'm a huge proponent. I got him as my number 5 guy. I think he's top 5 amongst draft-eligible quarterbacks in college football. I think this guy is going to be able to put up big-time numbers. Oh, and by the way, if you play college football 25, he might be one of the most fun players to play with, by the way. Not a lot of people may, know about him as much. Definitely people of Blacksburg know a whole lot of what he's able to do and what he can produce as. Give me Kyron Drones, man. I really love this kid's ability. I really love what he brings to the table. I think he's going to have a monster season for the Virginia Tech Hokies. All right, going into the number 4, this is when we start to enter the chat of guys who I think are first-round commodities and dudes who I think are almost entirely set up to fail if they're not drafted in the first round. And, of course, here's a guy I've been a big fan of. I'm hyping up my guy Kyron Drones over there at Virginia Tech pretty high going into the season. But here's a dude that, going into last year, I was always a huge fan of. And look, let's just make this one cute and simple. It's Jalen Milroe, quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think this guy is a first-round quarterback. You know what? I have been a huge fan of him going into the season for the Crimson Tide. I spoke highly of him going into that Texas game, in which I still think he had an absolute monster performance in, despite being benched the next week. And I think Alabama's football team felt not having Jalen Milroe in that Week 3 game against USF when they almost lost. This dude is an absolute leader. He's an absolute contributor. And let me tell you this. Nick Saban is gone. The greatest coach of all time has left the building, ladies and gentlemen. But I will assure you of this. Coach Kalen DeBoer and the era that he is entering in as a head football coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide is underway. And let me tell you this. He cannot be in a more perfect situation, Jalen Milroe is, than having Kalen DeBoer as his offensive-minded head coach coming into this situation for the Crimson Tide's offense. Look, Milroe's got everything that Kalen DeBoer would want in a quarterback, just like with Michael Penix Jr. last year for Washington. Cannon, rocket arm. We've seen that on demonstration several times. Look at the game against Texas. Look at the game against Ole Miss. Look at several games on tape when he utilized his wheels as a mobility. Look at the game against LSU when he ran all up and down them. He's got such a tremendous capability that he's one of the most difficult quarterbacks that is going to be able to be almost merely impossible to defend. Oh, and by the way, everybody's favorite play, 4th and 31, 4th and Milroe, whatever you want to call it. The game when he threw the game-winning touchdown pass against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. No better way to do it than what he did there. Clutch, cannon arm, incredible mobility. Give me Jalen Milroe every damn day of the week. This guy is a first-round commodity, and he's going to be getting some of the best coaching of his entire career with the new head man for the Alabama Crimson Tide, Coach KD, Coach Kalen DeBoer. All right? I think I've gone on a rant too much with my past two quarterbacks. Let's get into the top 3 guys who I think are solidified within being, shall we say, looked upon as being possible franchise quarterback material. Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback. This is an interesting one for me. It's just sort of me backing up the media's perspective of Quinn Ewers and sort of just coinciding, collaborating with what they think of this guy. Really, it sort of reminds me a lot of what a lot of people have said about several other quarterbacks who have played in college football, like a Trevor Lawrence, like a Justin Fields, just highly touted dudes that were just always going to ride or die and just say, look, man, they're going to be first rounders regardless of what. Ewers is a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Leader of Texas football. I think with C.J. Baxter, their running back, injured for the entire season, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the alpha of the offense. Unlike last year where, he was injured. He was a little bit banged up through a couple of games, about 3 or 4 games where they had to play Malik Murphy in. Of course, he played in the big games. Came into Bryant-Denny, beat the Crimson Tide. First quarterback to do that since Joe Burrow did it in 2019. I think that's a very significant stat. Of course, going into that game against Kansas last year, Kansas was highly touted. They were able to beat them 40-14. Look, this guy, guiding the Longhorns all the way to the Big 12 championship game. It's just smoking Oklahoma State, getting them all the way to that game against Washington. This guy is a huge factor, man. This guy is, the leader of Texas football. And he's a guy that's obviously reaped benefits of playing in a savvy, innovative offense with Steve Sarkisian, and going into his junior season and his third year as their starting quarterback, you can only imagine, he's going to be able to build upon what he's been able to do the past couple of years and only be better. 3,000 yards in the air last year, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks. If anything, he's going to be able to put up better numbers than what he was able to do last year. I think he's another guy, clear-cut favorite for the Heisman odds. Quinn Ewers, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I think enough is said about that. Let's get into my number 2 guy, and let's keep it within the SEC conference. And here's a guy that, you go to Athens, Georgia, they'll tell you that this is the best quarterback in college football, maybe the best quarterback that Kirby Smart's ever had. I agree in unison. This is Carson Beck, quarterback for Georgia. Of course, another highly touted kid, another kid who led a very successful football team in the Georgia Bulldogs last year, who still believe that they should have been in the playoffs and contended for a championship last year. They'll get their chance as the number one team in college football this year. Carson Beck, couple of things. Playing that Georgia offense, you're not going to have a lot of dropbacks. I'm, sort of utterly shocked that he did throw the ball 400 times last year. That's a little bit unprecedented for a Georgia offense. I think if he can be able to do that and a little bit more, I think you can be able to see the full tap potential that Carson Beck's got. Carson Beck, to me, he's a flashy kid, okay? I think he's so flashy. His lights are so flashy. It's like almost like LED lights beaming into your eyes, like burning your eyes into a crisp. He's that flashy, okay? Of course, they're a very run-oriented football team. They want to be able to wear you down with that. That's always been the agenda, what Kirby Smart's been able to utilize as his attack for his offenses. But, dude, we have seen games, right? We have seen the glimpses, the sample sizes of Carson Beck being able to drop back and be able to push the ball down the field. It's happened several times. Look at the tape against Kentucky last year, where I thought he was ultra impressive. Look at the tape even against, I think at times in the Ole Miss ball game, he had shown a lot of unique capability. The Florida State ball game, even though it was an absolute ass whooping, I think he showed some capability in that ball game. 3,000-yard passer, almost got to 4,000 yards in the air, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's a guy that can push the ball down the field. Not really too many unique things that he can do. I would like to see him a little bit more under pressure and more pressure situations. I'd like to see him a little bit more being able to extend plays. And, ultimately, I want to see Carson Beck, like we saw in some glimpses last year, just take over a ball game, okay? Just throw away the concept of running the football so much at Georgia and just say, look, I'm the man. Coach Smart, I'm the guy that can go out here and get it done myself. I think if we see a little bit more of that this season, I think this guy could solidify himself as a top 10 draft pick and, possibly the first quarterback taken off the board in the 2025 NFL draft. I think we could see that happen if he becomes that guy for Georgia. But right now, the flashes, the glimpses are too much to ignore. We have to put him here as our number 2 guy, even though I really like Milroe. I think he's going to put up a big year in the SEC. I even like Quinn Ewers. I think those guys are real challengers to Carson Beck in terms of being the best quarterback in the SEC conference. But I think right now, as it stands, August 20th, I think he's the best quarterback in the SEC conference going in. But don't hold on that, okay? Don't hold out on that because Milroe, Quinn Ewers, they're ascending pieces now. And if, they put up a big year and Carson Beck maybe, takes a couple of steps back to his game, I think we could look otherwise to them to being possibly the better quarterbacks of this conference. But I don't think it's any stranger to who the number 1 quarterback in college football is. That's Shedeur Sanders, Colorado. I'm just going to give it to you straight. I know the situation at Colorado was not ideal. It was abysmal, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it anymore. It was a pretty shitty demonstration of how to not prepare for a college football season for Deion Sanders and those Colorado guys. But here's one thing's for sure is that they got 2 of the best players in college football in Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, who I think is the best quarterback in all of the land. Played behind the worst offensive line in college football. Not much of a supporting cast. Terrible defense. So much you can critique. So much you can throw at them. So much you can say, how can you say that? Carson Beck is better, but Carson Beck plays in a better situation. Might we remind each and every one of our listeners, okay? Shedeur Sanders is not playing for a Georgia. He's not playing for an Alabama or an Ohio State. He's playing for a Colorado football team, which has been in shambles lately, and they're looking to Deion to be the savior of the football team. But they're in good hands, folks. They got the best quarterback in college football who's hoping his offensive line can keep his jersey clean, hoping that his defense can stop a nosebleeds next year. But I can assure you of this. The air game will be prolific. This is a dude that can extend plays. We've seen pure elite ability from this guy. And essentially every time he took the field for Colorado last year. A couple of bumpy games, of course. But you look at that game against TCU, I'm talking right out the bat, the first game Shedeur Sanders ever played in the Power 5 level. Fucking torched TCU. 500 yards in the air. Came back against Nebraska, 300-plus yards. The guy's incredible. When his team rallies around him and plays in unison, you see what the guy can do. He's a purely elite quarterback who will be starting on Sundays this time next year. I'm almost guaranteed we will be talking about Shedeur Sanders' debut in the NFL. He is that good. Carson Beck is great. Ewers is great. I think all those guys are great names. I think, I wouldn't take umbrage if you were to say they're the best quarterbacks in college football, but I damn well know that the most unique quarterbacks are the guys who played the game like Shedeur Sanders. Maybe I'm an idiot, but I don't think I am. I've seen what I've seen out of this kid. I have seen NFL potential. I think he could be a number 1 overall pick in the draft. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, and I will speak ad nauseum about this coming season. The Raiders are the most ideal team for him to play for. I can see him in a Raiders uniform. He's got that Raiders mentality. He's got that Raiders attitude. Let's hope, at least for the Raiders fans' sake, they hope that they have a terrible season and that Shedeur Sanders could be falling right into their laps as the number 1 player in the NFL draft in 2025. Which, by the way, folks, it will be here before you know it. But before you know it, more imperatively, college football is right around the corner. A couple of days from now, folks. So we're going to be coming out with so much more content. You guys hold on to it because we will be here. We will be here to your support just like we were last year. Coming into our second year doing this, I cannot wait to give you guys so much more exclusive content. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget to listen to the podcast every single week to get your college football insights. It is your host, Steve Money Take, signing out. And look, hope everyone has an awesome day. Hope everyone enjoys their college football season. Peace out.